Why OG Anunoby completely changes the Knicks. The Knicks recently traded away Immanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett in return for OG Anunoby and Precious Achiuwa. And although a lot of people have a very negative view of this deal, in my opinion, I think there's a real silver lining to this deal and a real reason to be excited about the potential this Knicks roster has going forward with OG. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports. I make opinionated NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. I also want to quickly mention that I recently started up an MMA channel, and if you guys are interested in that, the link will be in the description. But anyways, let's get into it. OG Anunoby was originally drafted with the 23rd overall selection during the 2017 NBA draft by the Toronto Raptors. And although OG didn't come into the NBA as good as he is currently now, and he definitely didn't have the same offensive skills that he has now, OG did a phenomenal job at consistently improving his game season after season until eventually he got to the point where he's at today. And when you look at OG's game today, I think it's pretty clear this guy is a 3-and-D plus type of player. And what I mean by that is OG does a really nice job offensively at hitting the catch and shoot 3-point jump shot, but he also does a nice job at scoring in other ways as well, whether you talk about pulling up for a mid-range jumper, whether you talk about driving all the way to the basket and finishing over or finishing around players with crafty layups. He has a decent ability to facilitate out there, and he's just a lot more versatile than a traditional 3-and-D type player offensively. But also, when you look at his defense, it's pretty clear that this guy is one of the better defenders really in the entire NBA. He does a phenomenal job at playing on-ball defense at a really high level. He can play off-ball defense at a really high level as well. And overall, it's just pretty clear that OG Anunoby has a really nice ability to play out there on both sides of the court. And due to that, he's been a real valuable piece for the Toronto Raptors over the years. But recently, as we all know, the Toronto Raptors decided to move on from him and traded him to the New York Knicks. And although a lot of people have a very negative view on this deal, in my personal opinion, I think there actually is a lot of positives to it. And I think the addition of OG Anunoby to this Knicks roster is going to make significant changes for the better. But a question that some of you may be having at this point is why? Why do I feel that way? Well, in my opinion, I think it comes down to a couple different factors, but the first factor that I want to touch upon is fit. Because I think when you look around the NBA and you look at some of the better teams in the league, what they do very well is they find players that mesh very, very well with their main players on the roster. And when you look at this Knicks roster currently, the main guys and the main stars are clearly Jalen, Brunson, and Julius Randle. And although RJ Barrett was definitely a pretty decent scorer out there, he had nice averages, he was shooting pretty efficiently, in my opinion, I think it was pretty clear that he didn't fit whatsoever with really either one of those guys. And that was actually a huge factor for why the Knicks weren't able to have more success in the playoffs in the past, and also a huge reason for why they weren't as good as they probably could have been. So I definitely do think fit is extremely important. And when you look at OG Anunoby, I think he's an absolute perfect fit for most teams, but especially for this New York Knicks roster. Now, some of you may ask why. Well, when you look at their main two stars the Knicks have in the roster in Brunson and Randle, both of them do a really nice job at driving all the way to the basket. And when you have both of your main guys that have a really nice ability to do that, you really need to have a lot of spacing on your team in order for that to be effective. And when you talk about OG Anunoby, he's a great catch and shoot 3-point shooter in general, but he's especially a phenomenal 3-point shooter from that corner shot. And he even shoots around 46% from deep from the corner. And when you have a guy that's an absolute knockdown shooter, defenses are going to need to respect him, and it's just going to open up a lot of different things offensively for New York, where either Jalen Brunson or Julius Randle can drive to the basket single covered and get and-one finishes or just finish around the basket in general, or if the opposing defense sends a double or triple team, then those players can easily kick out to OG, and as I mentioned before, he is shooting 46% from that corner three, so he's virtually a knockdown shooter from that range, which actually makes a lot of things a lot easier for this Knicks offense now with OG Anunoby as opposed to what it was before he arrived. And even besides his ability to hit that catch and shoot 3-point jump shot, he's also shown a really nice ability to cut to the basket, where both Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson can find him for easy dunks or layups. And of course, even besides that, if the Knicks want to give rest to both of their stars in Brunson and Randle, OG can do a really nice job at scoring for himself at times as well, as he has shown the ability to score for himself in the past, and in my opinion definitely has the ability and capability of putting up 17 plus on any given night. Now, besides his offensive abilities that complement both Brunson and Randle very effectively, I also think his defensive abilities complement both of those guys as well. Because if you have OG Anunoby in your lineup defensively, he's going to do a really nice job at guarding the opposing team's best player night in and night out, but even besides that, he's going to do a really nice job at taking a lot of pressure off Jalen Brunson. Because for how good Brunson has been offensively, the defensive end has definitely been a concern for Jalen. And if you have a lockdown defender like OG that can guard his initial defender, but also do a really nice job at playing help defense, it's just going to take a lot of pressure off Jalen and a lot of pressure off a lot of other guys on this roster and just make the Knicks defense that much better overall. So I definitely do think the fit of OG on this roster is virtually perfect. And I think the fit is actually going to be a significant reason for why I think the Knicks are going to be a lot better after this OG trade as opposed to where they were before. Now, the next reason for why I think OG Anunoby is going to make the Knicks a lot better is due to his experience. Now, when you look at this Knicks roster, they definitely do have a handful of guys that have some NBA experience under their belt, like Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby now, some other guys as well. But at the same time, a lot of those guys, or really all of those guys, have not won an NBA championship yet. So the fact that OG does have that championship experience is actually going to be extremely important to everybody, young guys, but also guys who have been in the NBA for some time. And just bringing in some championship DNA within your organization is always going to be a good thing, but especially when that championship DNA is coming from a player that's going to be a significant part of what you end up doing this season and also in the long-term future, assuming the Knicks do re-sign OG to a long-term contract. I definitely do think that should not be a factor that's overlooked. And this factor is more so going to come into play once the Knicks make the playoffs, assuming they do make it there. So overall, I definitely am a huge fan of this OG trade. I do like a lot of what OG is able to do offensively, like spreading the court out as well as scoring for himself, but also I'm a huge fan of his defensive ability. And I do think a lot of the things that OG does at a very high level were things that the Knicks have been missing for really the last 20 or so seasons. So I definitely do think this is a huge addition for New York. Now, I will say I did like RJ's and Immanuel Quickley's games. Both of those guys, I think they both did nice things offensively, and for RJ, he did some nice things defensively at times. But as I mentioned before, I didn't necessarily think RJ fit in with those two main guys in Brunson and Julius whatsoever, so I don't necessarily think moving on from RJ is the worst thing in the world. And for Immanuel Quickley, although I definitely would have liked the Knicks to hold on to him, at the end of the day, if you're moving on from a guy in Immanuel Quickley that was most likely going to leave in free agency anyway, and you move on from RJ Barrett, and you're able to bring in a guy in OG Anunoby that helps you out in a lot of different areas that you were really struggling in for a really long time, but especially during this season, I don't necessarily think it's the worst trade in the world, and actually I am a pretty big fan of this deal for New York. Now, I will say after this deal, it does open up a little bit of a hole for the Knicks in that backup point guard position, but I definitely am expecting another move to follow this for a backup point guard for New York. But I guess only time will tell what does end up happening for OG Anunoby and also the New York Knicks. But I will say I am extremely excited to see what does. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think the trade of OG Anunoby to New York was a good one for the Knicks, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these two videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out guys.